I'm Shari and I'm going to be showing you a skill today, and that skill is using hammers. So we are going to be here for the next 15 minutes and we're going to be talking about hammers, and by the end of the session you're going to be able to inspect hammers, use them safely and correctly, and identify faults with hammers. So we're in the workshop here. I've swept before, done all our housekeeping issues around us and made it safe. But if the alarm does come over, our nearest muster point is over at the contractor's car park. So you'll need your SWAT car to get out, but in case of an emergency, they'll open the gates in any case. So, is this a hammer?
No.
No? What about this? Is this a hammer? No. You're right. These are only a hammer if you're a boilermaker and the tools aren't yours. But you should never use a tool that isn't made for the job. So, we have lots of different hammers here in the refinery, and the main thing is to choose the correct hammer for the job. So if you've got a hammer that is too light, you're going to be spending a lot more time swinging it, and that is going to potentially create more injuries on yourself and excess labouring. So you always want to be able to pick the hammer that's right for the job. If you pick a hammer that's too big and too heavy, then you're going to cause yourself injuries and strains straight away off the bat, because it's not the right tool for the job. So you always want to be choosing what you're doing. So whether if it's a small job where you're only smacking in nails, for example, you're only going to be wanting to use a claw hammer nail because it's specifically designed for that job. In the refinery, we tend to use sledgehammers because they are the most appropriate hammer for the jobs that we do out here. So using it on valves, heavy machinery, wedges, things like that. You want to make sure that the hammer you have selected for your job is of a good quality and that it's safe to use. So when looking at hammers, you're going to be wanting to inspect them before you do any work with them. So first things first, gloves, because you might pick up a hammer and it might have splinters on the handle.
Right.
Yeah, that's never good. So I've picked 3 hammers. These ones aren't in too bad a condition, but you can see the varying head sizes on them, and you can feel the weight differences. So if you pick up that one, for example, that's quite a nice one.
That's right, yeah.
But then if you pick up this one,
Yeah, much heavier.
much heavier.
Yeah.
So this might be appropriate if you're only going to maybe give it 3 bangs, or it might be appropriate if it's something that's going to have a lot of give, perhaps like wood or something like that, and even a valve handle. If this isn't too heavy for you, because everyone comes in different strengths and sizes and things, then it could be the appropriate hammer for you. But for me, this would be way too heavy. I would definitely be causing myself injury. So when you're inspecting a hammer, you want to make sure that the shaft hasn't got splinters, isn't cracking or splitting, isn't covered in grease, and same goes for your gloves, making sure that they're in good condition and don't have grease on them, because the last thing you want to be doing is slipping. Making sure that, you can see here, this one's had a few knocks over using it, and it's starting to split down here. You also want to pick up and check that the hammer head is still solidly connected to the body. We've had a lot of injuries at the refinery lately with hammer heads flying off the hammer bodies, but there have been new ones. So they're still investigating what's going on with that. But see how you've got the wedge inside there?
Yeah.
When you smack the wedge into the wooden shaft of the hammer, that expands it into there, and that will be what holds it. Your hammerhead itself, this has got the starting stages of mushrooming, which, like a mushroom, it curls over. And you can fix this, bring it back to the workshops and get adequately trained people on the equipment to fix it. On the grinders, usually the Boilermakers. I think there's some fitters who are also trained and passed out, but you have to ask them. So you can fix these and make them good. If the shaft of the hammer is broken, we can order new ones from the store and replace them. But sometimes they will just replace the whole hammer because that's cheaper. Go figure. Yeah, so when you're using hammers, you always want to make sure that they're in good condition before you use them. See how this one is also painted blue?
Yeah.
That indicates that this is a soft head hammer, so that when you are hammering things, the hammerhead will give before the material that you're hammering. So if this was a hardened material hammerhead, and you hit something else that was hardened, that would cause it to shatter and then damage yourself and the equipment. So the point of the whole soft hammerheads is that this will give before anything else will.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
They're blue.
They're blue. That's why you see
okay.
them. That's the indication for a soft head hammer.
Right.
Yeah. All hammers on site should be a soft head, unless it's a specific hammer for a specific task. So we'll have copper hammers, for example, or rubber mallets even. There's even rubber mallets that have filled with sand, so that when you do impact, it will absorb the vibration and potentially not come back up the shaft towards you.
And you have rubber handles too on some.
They do, yes.
Yeah.
But all equipment you use, you always must check it out beforehand.
Yep.
So that's definitely what you're wanting to do. The other thing is too, which I found interesting when researching, so when you're swinging hammers, you know when you get a valve that's particularly difficult to operate and you could be swinging for a while, you are to swing for a total of 10 to 20 swings of the hammer and then take a 3 to 4 minute break. In that time you need to be doing some stretches to reset your position and your body, and this is going to help with any strains and sprains that you might cause to yourself. You also will need if you've got another person, in that time they can take over, but you're rotating the task, so you're sharing the load. There is also, you're supposed to, they say, 2 hours maximum within a shift. But that's not 2 hours including your smoko breaks. That's 2 hours of total continuing hammering. So if it's more than that, you need to stop the job and clarify and seek help, pull the help chain, because obviously that valve is seized and it doesn't matter how much hammering you do. But yeah, so it's interesting. So if you are going to be doing hammering, especially in this cold weather at the moment, you want to be making sure that you do some stretches and limber up, so that you are having the best possible safe use of a hammer and of your body positioning, so that you can look after yourself.
Yep.
So yes. So.
And these are all long handle, eh? Not short handles?
No, these are all long handles, because the idea is that you will have maximum leverage without having to have such a short thing. So remember I was saying that you get the right hammer for the right job?
Yeah.
So this hammer, being longer, will allow you to have maximum leverage with as little force on yourself as possible. But if I was to use this, if this was only here, considering that the hammerhead itself is actually heavy, you're going to be having all of this weight trying to pull down and not getting very far because you don't have the leverage to be able to use it effectively. Now I have a YouTube video to show you.
Okay.
And you correct these yes. to use a sledgehammer.
Okay, there is a way of using a sledgehammer. Well, I haven't learned anything about using a sledgehammer, right? It's not major and stuff, full of muscles and every back and whatnot. This is the way I use it. I've seen people when they're first using it, sprain your wrist, pull your back. You really need some damage with these things. I've seen people like this trying to use a sledgehammer like that. It doesn't help. Right, back straight, back on. Right, vertical. It's the hammer. Okay, back. And then when you want to strike, where you want to strike, throw this up in the air, and that's it. Throw it up in the air, you want to pull down on this arm, your left, yeah, and as the hand's coming down, slide your hand down, like that. Okay?
Chopping wood.
That's stop.
Yeah.
Time before you break through that.
You certainly will be. I would be looking at alternative methods.
Right, about 10 inches deep this concrete. So that's going to break it on it.
So he's now seeking alternative methods,
Yeah.
as I would be too.
Yeah.